This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. And I'm joined here with a very special guest, Garrett Carlson from The Loop Marketing. Hi, Garrett. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. But just to kind of break the ice and get us started and get the ball rolling, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, everything that we need to know about you for those people watching that don't know, um, your favorite color, I don't know, everything.
Sure. So I am currently the content manager at the Loop Marketing, and I have an interesting background because I am coming from public high school. I was a public high school teacher, and I transitioned to digital marketing, which is not the most common kind of transition. Um,
That's so
and
interesting. Um,
yeah, it was super challenging.
you look young, so you were like the hot young teacher at the high school.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, I taught, creative writing, which was super cool. Um, and I really loved teaching the students and working with the students. Um, but I think I'm someone who's really goal-oriented, and I kinda just wanted to change sort of directions.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Um, but no, yeah, it totally makes sense. I think I mean, creative writing and digital marketing, and you do content marketing. They're not that far off, right? Because I mean, creative writing's basically telling a story, and content marketing is very much storytelling. So I think it totally makes sense that you would sort of make that jump. You still stayed within that niche. Um, when did you actually do that transition and how difficult was it? Because I feel like it would be hard to begin to get jobs in something like this when you have a background of teaching. I imagine they would be like, shouldn't you just like be a teacher at another high school?
Yeah, I got that a lot. Um, so I left teaching after 6 years, and that was in 2019, and I applied to a couple jobs, and nothing was really sort of working for me at that point. At the same time while I was teaching, I was also getting a nonfiction writing degree. So, like, I was continuing my writing myself. So my wife suggested, why don't you just start writing online? Here, take this content marketing book, read it. This was something that she did really well. And I started working on my own website. And what I started with was kind of just writing for myself and writing the things that I was interested in. And then eventually sort of figuring out a little bit of what was working for my audience and what was working for Google, and I was making friends and making new connections with people, and it turned out to be pretty successful. And one of the biggest struggles with that, with just having sort of a content marketing blog, um, is that there isn't a ton of just like money in the blog itself and in the writing of it. So that's when I transitioned to the content manager role, which I transitioned after probably about 2.5 years, I think. Um, and that's where I'm at now.
That's so interesting. And with creative writing, how I mean, obviously you were able to integrate that so much into content marketing, but I wonder with how social media works, with how like the internet has sort of been evolving, with AI being a thing nowadays. How was like that specific transition? Like how are you able to use what you knew about being a creative writer and like the basis of telling a story and translate that into the digital marketing space and what you do now?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent with this one.
No, go ahead.
Um,
I go on tangents when I ask the questions and like you can totally do that.
okay, perfect. So for me, I think the biggest thing that was really important with creative writing was building connections with the people reading the stories. Finding something that was universal that tied them to what I was writing, that made them feel like they understood my experience. And as I was writing for my own website at the time, I realized the pages that people were spending the most time on were the pages that I would include these personal narratives, these stories that were, lighthearted, poking fun at myself, or just something that like made them remember something in their life. And then also using sort of content marketing best practices, the keywords and all that fun stuff. So when it comes to creative writing and content marketing, I think the most important thing to me is building that connection with the audience because that is what keeps them on the page, that keeps them reading, that keeps them interested in what you're doing. And with AI kind of takes that away. And with more AI articles coming out and Google Gemini and all that stuff happening, what we end up happening is kind of this circle of just AI written stuff that is, here's the original AI article, and then AI scrolls the internet and reads that AI article, and then rewrites it again and rewrites it again. And eventually, at some point, everything is just going to be kind of taken from AI, except for the blogs that or content that's created by
Right, people.
someone, yeah, by people that like tell a story, that build that connection with other people.
Yeah, and like I think AI in general is just not at a place where it's even able to replace human involvement. It's you can totally tell when something was done with AI because of how it's phrased or the wording that they use. It's still not like natural. It doesn't make me want to connect. It's just sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah. If you've ever asked ChatGPT to like write a joke, like that is one of the easiest ways to figure out that like it is nowhere near ready to speak like a human. Like it doesn't tell good jokes. It just can't do it.
Yeah, no, actually, I always say this. I was once going where was it? I was, like, on a texting, on, like, the talking phase with a guy that I was seeing, and we were, like, just texting each other, and he sent me a message, and I didn't know how to reply with, like, a witty remark. So I went into ChatGPT, and I was like, "Tell me what to answer." And ChatGPT just gave me whack answers because the jokes were, like I mean, I the thing wanted me to send this guy hashtags on a text message, and I was like, "That's so bad, like, I can't do that," and I realized, like, it was a real human interaction, that text message, conversation, and ChatGPT just could not help me with that because the answers were horrible. I was like, "How am I supposed to send this to a person?" Like, regardless of what relationship we have or what the context of the conversation is, these type of texts are weird. They're not, like human. It's a robot, and he's clearly gonna tell that I got this on AI if I send it to him.
Yeah. There's just, despite what a lot of people try and say about AI, it still just doesn't have that human element to it. And I think with humans, we make mistakes. We, use weird turns of phrase. And that's just something that AI can't do yet. Um, and I'm not sure if it will ever be able to actually do in a way that, removes the need for the human element in terms of, whether it's marketing content or just storytelling in general.
I guess it's complicated. We would have to see how sort of technology evolves, but I think as it is right now, it's kind of hard because AI is kind of just pulling stuff from the internet and then sort of making something out of what has already been created, but it's not able to sort of come up with new ideas in a way that a human could,
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
right?
Uh,
Yeah. Like I guess that's like my opinion. It could be different. But we would have to see how sort of technology evolves and if they can create algorithms that are like nearly human and we're living in this sort of matrix-esque Wall-E type of world, then I'm gonna swallow my words. But until then, I think we still need people and I hope we always do. I don't want to live amongst robots.
and we don't wanna be watching, like, AI-written movies or TV shows or, like, we don't wanna start consuming AI-created media. That'll be really
Mm,
bad.
it's really unhinged too because AI doesn't really have like any kind of ethical restrictions, I think, in the sense that an AI bot is just going to like follow the lead of whoever is making it do something, like it's gonna be like write a story about a sad person and then the AI is just gonna write the most extra story about the sad person and it's not gonna like consider anything outside of just doing that. And so is that really a type of movie that you wanna be watching and seeing, with, like, no sort of regard to the person because a robot made it?
Yeah, and I think that ties back into, AI-created content. Like, if you don't wanna watch an AI movie, you don't wanna listen to AI music, why are we creating AI-written content?
Yeah.
It's no different.
Yeah, it really is. Now I know that you have used a lot of, your content marketing knowledge for a lot of businesses that you helped with branding, right? Um How is, like, storytelling I know storytelling is important for a lot of brands to sort of connect with audiences, in marketing, that's probably one of the biggest things that you tell people when they're trying to, like, rebrand or create a brand or starting a business is like, "Okay, you need to create a story for your company and, make that connection so that your consumers or your customers or whatever, people are gonna use your product to want to buy from it." But I have this question about how content marketing can tie into B2B type of businesses, because I feel like that's a very obvious connection for me to make when it comes to B2C, because you're talking about a consumer who is just a normal person. And a lot of the times, the stuff that they are purchasing is personal to their life, right? Like if it's a t-shirt, you want a t-shirt for yourself because you are going to wear it. If it's a product for like skincare or something along those lines, it's probably because you need that product on your face. But when it comes to something a little bit more abstract, like B2B or SaaS companies, where, like I guess, especially when you move on to more niche companies, I think it can get a little bit blurry for me of how content marketing can be beneficial. And I've been meaning to ask you what you think is sort of useful for these type of businesses.
So, this might be a little out, uh, out of sync with traditional thinking, but B2C, B2B, I think at the end of the day, you're still trying to speak to someone that's human. Like, a business is not just some sort of entity that's gonna read your content. Like, you're still writing content for humans. So, you're still trying to solve their problems. So, I think the lines between B2C and B2B content aren't as big as we sometimes make them out to be. I think you're just answering different problems. But at the end of the day, there isn't some sort of giant business like that's going to read your content. You're still writing it for someone, like a human being is going to have to absorb your content. Um, I know that's a little bit different than what traditional digital marketing people talk about, but I think that might be some of just me being a storyteller and like my background in creative writing. That's where it sort of leads me to believe.
No, that totally makes sense. I think it's really easy for us to sort of think about a big business being like no people, just big bad corporation, right? But there are people there that are working, and there are people there that are sort of trying to make those connections. Um, but how do you actually integrate it? For example, if you were to create a piece of content for or help them, you don't necessarily have to create it, but if you're going to help someone make content for something that's, you know, fairly generic and easy to market, like, let me think of something like a bakery, right? Like, you're helping a bakery, local bakery, get their name out there, become more popular, with something that's, digestible. Everybody knows about baked goods. Versus if you were helping some sort of like SaaS company with some kind of CRM or something like that, what would be the difference in the type of content that you're going to sort of direct them to make to sort of see success in their branding and create those connections through storytelling?
Yeah. So I think for like something local like a bakery, that is where you pull your personal experience and you take your memories of food and bakeries and try and tell that story to someone else, because everyone has been to a bakery. Everyone has had a good piece of cake or something that like reminds them of something. So you're trying to almost be nostalgia in a way with something that's local in a bakery. Um, Whereas if you're looking for the software as a service, you're really trying to just solve problems. So it's almost in a way, B2C, you're creating a feeling. B2B, you're solving problems. It's a bit more analytical. It's a bit more straightforward. And because your audience in a B2B, let's say you're writing for an audience of, HR managers, there might be 4 or 5 different HR managers that have to interact with your content that have sort of different roles, and they're looking for different things. So, that human connection isn't going to be as strong. You're really just trying to figure out and solve what they need and present that in a way that's interesting, that's engaging, that's entertaining.
Yeah, that totally makes, I mean, I've seen some CRM type of, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Zendesk. Um, at my previous job, I was introduced to that platform and I used it because we were doing some consumer service stuff through that. For those of you watching reading that don't know, Zendesk is a customer service platform, right? To like answer tickets and stuff. In my previous job, I sort of learned about it because you can connect it to WordPress and all of these other things to sort of track data. I was very new to just marketing and consumer service, just like, I guess, business in general. It was my first job in the world. I was, a kid fresh out of college, just trying to figure it out. And I learned how to use it, but I just kind of saw it as this corporate thing. Um, and I never really gave it much thought other than the fact that this was something that I had to use at work. I remember going on TikTok one day, of all places, and finding that they were very active on TikTok and they were doing sort of very young trends and very like they had young people at the face of it, at the forefront. And I was like, wow, I was so surprised because in my head, Zendesk was just run by a bunch of old people and only old people knew about it. And the reason that I knew about it was because I had an old person job. Like that was my logic at the time, was just so, I mean, I'm not saying that that was good, but I'm just saying, like, I was surprised to see that this company was doing such, young people focused content marketing. And they were really just trying to target a lot of sort of newer businesses to use it as a platform for their customer service. And I think that's a really great example of, seeing sort of a SaaS company or something do that. And I remember being really surprised because I had never expected them to do something like that.
that I think that is sort of the difference between like blog content and social media content is really the audience and what you're creating. I think with blog content,
Mhm.
I think you're looking for a bit of an older audience still. Um, because I think younger people are moving to Reddit. I think younger people are on TikTok. There's other ways of getting the answers than blog content for younger people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've seen I think Reddit is like a great place for young people to be at. The problem is that kind of with Reddit, it's kind of a cesspool of just a bunch of stuff. Um, and I think like with what I see is just with younger audiences, there's a bigger demand for ethics, and for I guess just transparency in what you're doing. I think I don't want to say that like younger people are smarter. I just think they're a lot more aware. You have a much more aware audience than the people who are from older generations who are just also not that familiar with internet culture and just internet in general. Not that everybody is, because I've seen some older people who are very well versed in stuff like this, but I think it's just in generally speaking.
And I think part of that is because of the access to information we have now. In, pre-internet days, a company releases a product, you have no idea who the company is, what they do, where they came from, any of that information. Whereas now we can find the company's name, we can find their address, we can find who works for them, we can find all of that information is easily accessible. And I think that the younger generation is used to having that information available and then making calls on what products they want to use based on that information as well.
Yeah, and like I think like just in general, you don't even trust the information that you're getting online as much anymore. Um, so I'm obviously a woman, which means that when I was like, I guess in my teens, I had a lot of sort of beauty products in my social media feeds, whether it was Instagram or YouTube or whatever it was at the time that was popping. And there were always like people recommending like, oh, use this makeup palette or this foundation, whatever it was. And I think like at first, like I noticed that people were sort of listening to a lot of influencers talk about a certain product and then they would just flock to buy it. And I've noticed that within like I guess the last 10 years when influencer marketing has sort of become a thing, specifically with industries like that, I've seen consumers be a lot more demanding of like, what is this an ad? Is this person lying? Like this influencer probably just wants money. That product is not that good, and sort of fluctuating towards more UGC type of videos and content creators that are maybe not as popular because it feels more genuine than the millionaire influencer who's promoting some product.
I wonder how that evolution is changing for like men's like skincare, men's health products. One thing that I noticed was when I was writing about, men's health is that there were a lot of men's skincare products that were really there was a concealer product that came out and it was no different than, my
Mhm.
wife's concealer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except it was black. It was in a black case. And like
Yeah.
yeah, and I think men's products are still I don't know if they're at that point yet of um, just men looking for products that don't look manly. Like I think they're still struggling a bit to really figure out what that market is. And I think that I'd be curious to see how that evolves and,
Time.
as the younger generation becomes more, you know, uh, gets more money and buys more products and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I feel like with it's like the pink tax on, a men's razor and the woman's razor, and it's basically the same thing except the woman's is pink. It's just it's reversed. And it's all kind of rooted in misogyny because I guess like for a long time men were not allowed to have that kind of self-care. And if you put that into perspective, like a moisturizer is going to be the same thing for a man and a woman. It's not about whether it's a woman's product. It's a product for someone's skin. And yeah, I think like there's still a lot of taboo with men sort of using stuff like this, with men wearing makeup. But I feel like with younger generations, with Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming in and sort of changing that idea, it's gonna keep sort of growing. And I think like hopefully we're in a world where it's just a product and not necessarily just for women or just for men, but it's just a concealer. Um, and maybe we'll see like consumers being just smarter in general instead of being divided by gender and sort of that kind of marketing strategy.
Yeah, I think that's the hope, and I know that for men's products, they're still a little behind. Um, a lot of men's products still feature like men who are like super, super muscular and with perfect bodies. And I think men haven't really had that conversation yet about like all bodies are, you know, bodies.
Yeah.
Uh, whereas I think women have been having that conversation for, decades. Um, and we've seen companies like Dove kind of try and, target people with their like
Different.
no makeup
Yeah.
commercials and stuff like that. Um, so um, I think the men have some catching up to do.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree. I think I also have noticed that there's a sort of homophobic in take to it because I do think we've seen sort of more men being involved in beauty, specifically in self-care. I've never seen more men sort of do their makeup and stuff, but I feel like there's this connotation that you have to either be a celebrity or gay to be doing skincare and makeup. Um, because I think for the longest time we've known that celebrities have some like male celebrities will have some kind of makeup on or like have skincare before they walk the red carpet or when they're filming movies, but everybody just kind of thinks of it as like, oh, that's a part of their job. They obviously have to do that. But when it comes to just a normal person that's walking this earth and living going about their life, I've noticed with the zeitgeist that there's this trend of thinking like, oh, if he like is really good at makeup, he's probably gay or maybe bi, which I think is really harmful and probably why we haven't seen sort of a lot of men be open about stuff like this or trying to even tap into a lot of these type of self-care conversations like you said or body issues because there's like this connotation that it's because you are bisexual or gay or whatever and even if that were a thing it's not a bad thing but I can see that how people sort of take that as a threat to masculinity.
Yeah, and I think if we tie it back to content marketing, in a way, that's where the storytelling and the human connection comes in.
Yeah.
Every guy has had an experience where they've seen, someone on TV, a Marvel superhero or something, and have been like, "Man, I wish I looked like them," and felt really uncomfortable in their own skin. Um, and they probably haven't admitted it to most people. Um, but if you're telling a story, in content, bring you can bring those things into your narrative, into what you're talking about. And that's a way to bring in that connection, to be vulnerable with other people. Um, I think that is one of the keys to really successful content is that vulnerability um, for whoever is reading your content.
Yeah, no, and like what you said about content marketing is so true. I think a lot of times where we get these sort of negative stereotypes or connotations or these type of thought processes comes a lot from what we consume in media, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a movie or a TV show. And it happens with in different ways for everybody, right? Because I think for women, it's also the same idea of what a like what a bikini body is, what a pretty woman looks like. And you sort of you don't even realize it when you're just interiorizing it, kind of just like internalizing it, sorry. Internalizing it. And you're getting it from watching a commercial where you're like, this girl was ugly when she had curly hair, but she used our product, and now look at her with her straight hair. She's beautiful. And then every curly hair in the world, girl in the world feels like, oh, okay, my curls are bad. Um, and the same thing happens for men when, they're watching a show of like, oh yeah, big, manly, strong guy, um, drinking protein. And then you don't even realize it when in your head that's like, okay, equal like, like attractive equals muscles. So like you said, content marketing can sort of really influence that sort of thought process in people, especially like I would say children, teens, like the younger generations. As you get older, you kind of become more critical. But when you're younger, you're just sort of watching stuff like this and just being like, okay, this is true. This is absolute truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that is going to continue to be challenging to change because media is going to always be changing and adapting to or there's more content creators than ever before. And I think that how kids consume media is going to be really, really important for us to look into as, we have a new generation of parents coming into the world. Um, and I would say, so I'm a new dad. Um, and I am very aware of the internet and content and all of that, whereas my parents weren't. And it'll be interesting to see how content changes for, our children, um, and whether or not we are able to take sort of the reflection that we've made towards our past, our families, our parents,
Or bringings, yeah.
yeah, and see how that might be reflected in, new children's cartoons, television, media, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen change. I'm not a new mom, and honestly, I haven't really been around like what's going on with children nowadays. But I have heard that children's TV shows now are a little bit less. Sort of some of the new ones coming out are a little bit more like educational. They try to like sort of introduce different things to children. I know that Bluey has, like, a lot of, like, emotional depth to it. My sister's like she watched it the other day, and she was like, "This is actually a really good show," and I was like, "It's a children's show," and she was like, "Yeah, but it has so many good lessons." Um, so I think, like, we have seen a wave of it. I think it's just difficult because of the amount of people that are on the internet, to sort of be able to have a consensus on one narrative and follow that. There's always gonna be content that's not the best or that gives you, maybe not the best values. Um, and as you said, we have to see how it evolves, how these children grow up. When I was growing up, the internet was sort of still I mean, my parents had no idea how to handle that, of me being wanting to be on social media. When I started like, I got on social media when I was a teenager, and my parents were so against it because they couldn't even understand what the hell I was doing. They were just worried that I was gonna get kidnapped. That was their idea of me being on social media was like, "Don't put your image on the internet because some guy is gonna wanna, like, kidnap you or something." It was so different, than, like, now if I have kids or like you said, you're a new dad, we know what it's like to be on the internet, and, my child I'm not gonna be surprised if I have a child and he's like, "I wanna be on TikTok," or whatever social media is popping in 2037 when I have children, but, um yeah, like, it's a lot different because you're talking to parents who are not completely lost on that.
Yeah. And when it comes to digital marketing, I think that's also the tie-in with audiences and who we are trying to appeal to and platforms. Um, I think the platform sort of separation is really clear these days between, who is using TikTok, who is reading, email newsletters, who is on LinkedIn. I think
Yeah.
I think those user bases are becoming more and more clear every day.
Yeah, it's definitely. And there's more like, I mean, there's even jokes about it of like Facebook moms and, like this Twitter stands and all of these because we've been able to make these distinctions of who is on this one platform, who's on this other platform, what generations are using what.
And it reflects the type of content that we create. Um, what we create for YouTube is going to be very different than the content we might create for a Facebook ad or a LinkedIn ad. And I think that is something that is really reflective of the people who have spent a lot of time on the internet, who have grown up with the internet. They're able to really sort of move between those boxes a lot more effortlessly.
Yeah. Because they can understand it so much better. It's so hard for someone who didn't grow up with that to even understand it. The internet culture stuff. Like I've tried to show my parents memes and then I have to explain so much and it's not funny anymore. And sometimes it's not even if they understand it, they're like, "How is that a joke?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, this might not be like, you know, might not be the best thing to show you."
EPT starts putting out memes, then we'll have to worry.
For real, I guess so. Yeah. Well, Garrett, I think this is a great note to end this podcast on. We've had a great conversation. Definitely went on a couple tangents. Got really philosophical, but it's all good. I had a lot of fun. It's great having you. But before we finish, I do want to give you the space to plug anything that you want to plug. If you want to send viewers your way, if anything that we spoke about today resonated with you, the space is yours.
Sure. So visit theloop.com, theloopmarketing.com, visit our website, read our blog. You can find me on LinkedIn at Garrett Carlson. That is my name. Yeah, those are the two places.
Awesome. I will be adding those links to the description of these videos so that people can go and find you easily. Thank you so much for being here today, Garrett. It was so
Yeah,
much fun.
thank you.
Thank you. And guys, I will see you on the next episode. Bye bye.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.